The knight in shining armor is the most enduring and evocative image of the medieval period. His armor is a vibrant reminder of an age when warriors were encased in steel, and the man himself became the weapon. At the height of its evolution, armor reached a peak of artistic achievement, a unique sculptural medium that made the knight look splendid, intimidating, invulnerable. It was a triumph of technological achievement, and its development was inextricably linked to that of other weapons of war. Throughout history, armor and weapons have competed in an arms race. One designed to protect the warrior from attack, the other intent on his destruction. At no time in medieval history was this contest more fierce than on the bloody battlefields of the 100 Years' War. For almost a century, English archers reigned supreme. Their arrow storms decimating the enemy, wiping out wave after wave of French cavalry. The quest was on to make the knight wholly invulnerable. And in 1424, outside the little French town of Verneuil, the English archers got a terrible shock. Here, they encountered a cavalry force whose armor was of such quality that it rendered their bows impotent. It was arrow-proof. This was a dramatic moment in the development of plate armor. But plate armor like this hadn't always been around. For almost 2,000 years, warriors had protected themselves with armors made from small iron rings. And what it is an extremely complex web of interlinked metal rings, each locked with an iron rivet. The Bayeux tapestry shows mail as the universal armor for warriors on both sides. Mail was particularly effective at protecting the knight against glancing blows. In a battlefield situation, the man you're fighting is going to be a moving target, so that he's moving away as you strike him. So you're only managing to get a glancing blow off the mail. And in those circumstances, the mail is perfectly adequate protection. In order to defeat mail, the attacker had to deliver an extremely heavy blow. We need to place heavy blows judiciously. We don't want to expend all our energy with every single move that we make. We will tire far too quickly. So, for instance, if I strike at my cello and he moves away, then I've wasted a lot of energy there. I've missed him, I've become vulnerable. I need to make sure that my heavy blows can have effect, so that if he comes at me, then now I can get it, because I disabled him for a moment. This is the blow that counts, and I can crack that down onto his back with full force. Whether the mail fails or not is not the central question. Here, putting a full body whack into him there, the shock is going to transmit through to the body, and I'm going to disable his fighting capacity. Mail was relatively lightweight and flexible, an ideal defense for a mobile knight. But Innovations in mounted warfare meant that mail had to withstand ever more powerful attacks. Most armies had similar types of armour, their defences effectively balancing each other out. But as weapons and tactics constantly developed, so too armour had to adapt in an arms race that was to change the face of war. In the 12th century, there was a revolution in military tactics. Cavalry were equipped with weapons capable of punching through mail. From the 12th century, the mounted knight became a force to be reckoned with. His weapon of first attack was the lance, capable of delivering tremendous impact. Against it, the mail of the early medieval period stood little chance. In order for the soldier to survive, armour simply had to evolve. Armourers had lost ground in the medieval arms race, but not for long. A technological breakthrough would eventually shift the balance of power. There is a popular image of the medieval knight in shining armour. But most medieval armours we see today are actually from the twilight of the period, the late 15th century. Early medieval armour is exceptionally rare and quite different to this. And without the surviving examples, we have to search for hidden clues. Manuscripts hint at new armour developments, but they don't tell us enough on their own. Fortunately, our medieval forebears also left us an astonishingly accurate image of their world, carved in stone. One of the most important pieces of evidence that we have for the development of early armour after the age of mail is this chap here. He dates from about 1230 and he lies in Pershaw Abbey in Worcestershire. Now, as you can see, he is largely covered with mail. But here's the important clue. If you look here, under his cloth surcoat and over his mail, we can see at the side these straps. And they indicate that he's wearing a solid body defence. The details on this tomb effigy suggest that the knight is wearing what was called a coat of plates. Now, no coat of plates has ever been found archaeologically in England, although some have been found in Scandinavia, so we've got an idea what they may have looked like. And they looked something like this. They're covered with a fabric covering which anchors the plates together. And it's an assembly of 6 plates giving maximum protection against the new impact warfare. But just how effective would this defence have been when faced by a lance driven home at full speed? At the Royal Military College of Science in Shrivenham, researchers use the latest equipment to replicate and record the effect of weapons against armour. I'm going to test our coat of plates against a high-velocity lance strike, equivalent to a knight charging on horseback. The armour is backed by a layer of mail and a padded cotton coat, known as an acketon, which gives additional protection and shock absorption. The coat of plates has survived remarkably well. Only the highest velocity strikes have penetrated the steel. But all of those penetrations are non-life-threatening. Underneath here is the mail, that hasn't been damaged at all. Underneath there is the accaton. So impact is being delivered, but this armour is proof against it. The armoured knight had regained the initiative in the arms race. And over the next 100 years, he would be armed with increasingly sophisticated defences. The challenge was to cover more and more of the body in steel plates. The problem was that early processes of iron production only yielded small blocks, which in turn were hammered into small plates. The great breakthrough came in the 14th century. They mastered the technique of temperature control, which had been an inherent problem in the running of larger furnaces. Now, larger furnaces meant larger plates. This was a seismic change that led to a unique European achievement, an exoskeleton of full plate armour. The arms race was at full pace. Now, craftsmen in the armour-producing heartlands of Augsburg and Milan began supplying Western Europe with vastly improved defences. The large plates of steel could be fashioned into elaborate shapes. For the first time, anywhere in the world, the human body could be encased in steel from head to toe. And the sight and sound of the medieval battlefield was forever changed. Plate armour was soon put to the test. In 1337, England laid claim to the crown of France. It started a century of conflict that drove the arms race to a new intensity. When you think of the 100 Years' War, you tend to think of three famous battles, of Edward III at Crécy, of Henry V against incredible odds at Agincourt, or Joan of Arc at the siege of Orléans. But today, I've come here to the little market town of Verneuil in northern France in search of another great battle, much less written about, but a battle of epic proportions, an extraordinary battle, and a battle in which the crash of armour played a crucial role. In the 100 Years' War, English military tactics relied heavily on one weapon: the longbow. A well-trained archer could shoot up to 18 arrows per minute. And when deployed in their thousands, longbowmen could decimate opposing forces of cavalry and infantry. At short range, the impact of the bow was particularly lethal. Capable of piercing even plate armour. as the French knights had discovered to their cost on the fields of Crécy and Agincourt. But in 1422, the great warrior Henry V died, and his 9-month-old son became king. Henry V's younger brother, the war veteran John of Bedford, took charge of his possessions in France. Sensing an opportunity to recover lost lands, the French challenged him to battle at Ivry, 50 miles north of Verneuil. The English army was ready for the fight. Their armour donned, their swords sharpened, and arrows prepared in their thousands. But their enemy didn't make it to Ivry. They changed direction and headed south to Verneuil, where they rendezvoused with massive reinforcements. French commanders had long relied on the cavalry charge. But the deadly power of the longbow, particularly when shot within a 20-meter killing zone, made knights and horses highly vulnerable. What the French needed was an invincible cavalry force. So they hired 2,000 Italian mercenaries equipped in the very latest armour technology. The best impression we can get of the sort of armour they were wearing at Verneuil is a rare example in the Kelvin Grove Museum in Glasgow. Here, Tobias Capwell looks after the Avant armour. It is the oldest surviving, near-complete Italian armour anywhere in the world. This is the only surviving image of the Italian cavalry dispatched to Verneuil. It's from about 50 years after the battle, and so the artist has represented the armour of his own day. Even so, it's a stirring image of massed ranks of mounted knights, each in their custom-built armours. In the summer of 1424, a force of 8,000 English soldiers marched towards the town of Verneuil in preparation for battle. They were confident of victory, their archers highly trained and capable of taking on any army, or so they thought. But the English military commander, John of Bedford, knew nothing of an elite force of cavalry also making its way towards the battlefield. Bedford's scouts had reported that the French army had assembled on the plain outside Verneuil, but nothing the scouts had told them could prepare the English for the sight that they were to behold as they emerged from these woods. The French outnumbered their enemy 2-1. And in their vanguard was a massive force of Italian cavalry. This was the ideal terrain for a cavalry charge. A wide, open plateau, baked hard in the summer heat.
The French forces are readying themselves for the charge. A line of archers would have been pulled across the main English position. These men would have hurriedly started to hammer their stakes into the ground, but it was August. The ground was hard. Their stakes would have made little impact. It was a flimsy defense line at best. And as they were hammering away, the cavalry, moving forward with all that weight of armour, would have started to shake the very earth as they gathered momentum.
The Italian cavalry prepared to ride into battle in tight formation. En masse and at full gallop, they had the potential to smash through the English lines. The workshops of Milan led the world. Even on the breastplate and the helm, their armour was only 2 millimeters thick. But how could such a lightweight defence be produced without sacrificing strength? There was an invisible ingredient: hardness. In the early 15th century, Milanese armourers discovered a way to increase the toughness of armour. And master armourer, Emrys, is going to make a breastplate using their technique. The secret of an armour's strength is not only in its curved surfaces, which are shaped to deflect attack and give added structural rigidity. It is also in the hardness of the steel. Emrys is heating the metal to red hot. He is about to plunge it under water, a process known as quenching. The sudden change in temperature will create a far more complex microstructure within the steel, making it harder.
Okay, so now you're going to quench it?
Now I'm going to quench it. This is the exciting bit.
This will be a very nice sizzle.
Got to get this exactly right first time. Here we go. I got to be really careful not to get it in the wrong angle.
This cold plunge has transformed the properties of the steel.
So it's now very hard, but very brittle.
It's very brittle. This is hard as glass at this stage. If I dropped it, it would shatter right now.
So what needs to happen, it needs to be tempered, which retains the hardness, but makes it softer, isn't it?
That's exactly right, yeah.
The breastplate must be reheated to make it more resilient. But judging the correct temperature is problematic. Medieval armourers did not have thermometers, so they studied the changing colour of the steel in order to gauge the degree of heat.
And what I've got to do now, and this is the most crucial part, I've got to get the colour absolutely right. I'm looking for a particular blue which will tell me when it's softened up to just the right degree. And this resets the metal. It makes it flexible. Springing, in fact, and it's getting very close now.
As the temperature rises, steel turns to yellow, to brown, to blue, to red.
It's the craftsman's eye.
It is.
If you're riding into battle, you've got to hope that your armourer had a good eye for colour.
Yeah,
It has to be the right one.
You see? See how blue that is?
Yeah.
You see the colour?
Gorgeous,
That is
colour.
absolutely spot on. That's ready to rock.
Once the metal turns blue, it is quenched a second time, permanently fixing its hardness.
Just a dip, just to cool it off. It's an instant. What this is doing is setting the metal again. It's setting the molecules in the metal. And there we are. And that is a perfect spring hardness.
So that is now ultimate hardness.
That is, it's as good as it gets. Arrows will bounce off that.
At Verneuil, the Duke of Bedford deployed 2,000 archers to resist the impending cavalry charge. But just how effective would his arrows have been against hardened Milanese armour? At the Royal Military College of Science, we put our breastplate to the test. Here's the breastplate we've had specially made and specially hardened and toughened, just the sort of thing they might have been wearing at Verneuil. So let's see how this will stand up to the power of the longbow.
Three, two, one.
The breastplate has been struck at 140 miles an hour to replicate an archer shooting within the killing zone, just 20 meters away. Goodness, look at this. There is some penetration. Look at that. You can see the hole, it's penetrated, it's gone through. But look what it's done to the arrowhead. Absolutely flattened it. That's absolutely blunt. But what of the padded coat underneath?
I don't think there's a mark on here at all.
The man hasn't even received a scratch.
If you were an archer at Verneuil, and you would see your arrows sticking out of the Lombard breastplates, but the men still sitting tall in the saddle, it would have made your blood run cold.
At Verneuil, the 8,000 English were hugely outnumbered. And coming straight at them was a cavalry force of 2,000 arrow-proof knights.
When the archer fire was so ineffective, arrows would have not only bounced off the armour of the cavalry, but bounced off the horse's armour as well, not breaking the momentum of the charge at all. And then crash, just knocking aside the line of archers, a bit like a wave, just blasting aside an old wooden jetty. And then the shock as the archers are trampled over, killed, dispersed, and then this force of cavalry moving on, gaining speed all the time, and does exactly the same thing to the main English position.
Line upon line of English soldiers were annihilated in this medieval blitzkrieg.
And at this moment, it looks like the game is up, the battle is lost. It's a catastrophic defeat for the English, and this is the rumour that now spreads in the surrounding countryside. The English army has been wiped out on the field at Verneuil.
The Italian mercenaries tore through the English ranks and pillaged the baggage train. English forces were scattered, confused, and in total disarray. But the battle wasn't over yet.
The French had victory in the bag, but the French had reckoned without John of Bedford. He was Henry V's younger brother, and he was regent of France, governing it for the infant King Henry VI of England. This was his land, his domain, and he would have victory here or die in the doing. He summoned his commanders, he gathered his men, and he told them, "Look, you're dead. Your baggage, your possessions mean nothing. All that matters now is your personal honor. All that matters now is your fame and glory. Follow me, I will lead you. We will win this day."
And with that, Bedford turned and led his knights into a bitter hand-to-hand struggle.
Whether or not an armor is actually penetrated by a weapon is not the only consideration. The body can still suffer immense injuries from what is known as blunt trauma. That is, the shock waves going through the armor to the body itself. It can cause hemorrhaging, it can cause fracture of bones, concussion, unconsciousness. We've set our breastplate up on this gelatin block. I am now going to hit it with the business end of a poleaxe, and we will be able to see the shock waves as they go through.
So our breastplate remains structurally intact. But the man inside may have been seriously injured by violent shock waves running through his torso. Bedford forced the French back towards Verneuil. And now they found themselves trapped, forced up against the steep defensive ditches surrounding the town. Here they were massacred.
The bodies of heavily armored men were rolled down these slopes, their bodies piling high as the slaughter continued, the dead and the half-dead. The bodies of the living were either drowned or crushed by the sheer weight of armor and men on top of them.
No quarter was given. This was murder. The Italian cavalry returned from their pillaging to find the battle over.
Despite his opponent's superior numbers and their cutting-edge armour, Bedford's men had won the day. No armour is proof against an unbreakable will. And at Verneuil, Bedford's fighting prowess had prevailed against overwhelming odds. His enemy was vanquished, and his king, Henry VI of England, was now also crowned King of France, the first and only monarch to rule both kingdoms.